It's day 39 of Bola Tinubu's presidency, and we're keeping tabs on activities and developments in his first 100 days in office. Thanks for joining us on the program. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. You can join the conversation now on Twitter. Let's have your feedback on the first weeks of the Bola Tinubu presidency. The question is, what's your assessment of President Tinubu's 1 month in office? Remember to use the hashtag first 100 days and tag at TVC News NG and at Nifemi Oguntoye. Let's begin with the from the presidential villa, where President Tinubu today says he's determined to remove all barriers impeding business growth in Nigeria, as he has approved the establishment of a presidential committee on fiscal policy and tax reforms. The committee is to be chaired by fiscal policy partner and Africa tax leader at PricewaterhouseCoopers, Taiwo Oyedele. It will comprise experts from both the private and public sectors and also have the responsibility for the various aspects of tax law reform, fiscal policy design and coordination. There is the harmonization of taxes and revenue administration. According to the special advisor to the president on revenue, Adelabu Adedeji, President Tinubu recognizes the importance of a sound fiscal policy environment and an effective taxation system for the functioning of government. I'm joined now live from the presidential villa, Abuja, our State House correspondent Femi Akonde for more updates from the presidency. Femi, just yesterday, the president signed some executive orders to ease tax burden on businesses. Walk us through the objectives of this presidential committee on fiscal policy and tax reforms.
On fiscal policy and taxation, their target is to transform the taxation system in the country to ensure it supports sustainable development and achieve a minimum of 18% tax to GDP ratio, and also ensure that while doing all of this, it does not stifle businesses, investment, and also economic growth and development. Well, you know, their target is also to ensure that they expand the tax net of the country, capture more people into the tax system, ensure that the country's revenue is jacked up from taxation, because it appears as if President Bola Tinubu's administration is trying to look away from borrowing, because the country's debt profile as it stands now, the country's debt profile is about 46.25 trillion. You know, it increased between 2021 and 2022. That is the current debt rate, and the country is spending so much on debt servicing. In 2022 alone, the country spent about 96.3% of revenue on servicing debt, and that is from the 83.2 trillion, I beg your pardon, that was spent in 2021. So President Bola Tinubu's administration is looking at other alternatives to debt borrowing, and it appears as if taxation and reforming the country's fiscal policy is the way to go for the administration. Nifemi.
Indeed. So this new committee is to be chaired by Taiwo Oyedele, fiscal policy partner and Africa tax leader at PwC. Femi, talk to us about the wealth of experience he's bringing on board and the expectations from him now.
Well, if I mean, from the profile that was shared by the presidency, Mr. Oyedele is a highly accomplished professional with extensive expertise in fiscal policy, taxation, and economic matters. He currently serves as PricewaterhouseCoopers Africa's tax leader, and you know that is a leading firm in a leading global firm in tax matters. And you know, in addition to his role, we hear that he holds several important positions in prestigious organizations, and he also chairs the Taxation and Fiscal Policy Faculty Board of the Institute of the Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. So it's expected that he'll bring all of this wealth of experience to bear to help the administration of President Bola Tinubu achieve its goal of reforming Nigeria's fiscal regime and tax policy. Nifemi.
The wait is on, Femi. Let's quickly talk about the expectation of Nigerians for the next set of ministers. Mr. President has just about 21 days to send this list to the National Assembly. What's the latest you're hearing from the presidency in this regard?
Well, we are hearing, Nifemi, that the president is not under any pressure to send these ministerial lists. He's going to do it at his own time. The special advisor on media, communications and strategy, Dele Alake, told us yesterday that the buck stops on the table of the president, and all predictions, second guessing, permutations and all of that, he says, are just fabrications by people in the media and fifth columnists. But the president is the one that would determine or decide which day he would want to send the list of ministers that would make up the Federal Executive Council to the National Assembly for confirmation. And yes, he understands that he has a period or a time frame which he would get this done. And we believe he's working within that time frame. Mr. Dele Alake is saying that, well, as long as Mr. President has not exceeded that time frame, then there's no cause to worry. Everyone should just be patient, wait with bated breath, and let the president do his thing. Nifemi.
The position was different before election. One of his aides was quoted to have said that 4 weeks is enough for a serious government to make known its intention in this regard. But like you said, we are waiting anxiously, well, perhaps patiently, like you said, the president is, to find out what his decision will be. State House correspondent Femi Akode live for us at the presidential villa. Partner and West Africa tax leader at Deloitte, Yomi Olugbero, is our next guest on the show. He brings an expert opinion on some of the president's tax policies in the coming minutes. But let's talk about some feedback we're getting from our viewers on Twitter. We asked the question, what's your assessment of President Tinubu's performance in his first 1 month in office? And here are some of the responses we are getting. This is from Jami Bamidele, who says President Tinubu is an executive 100% at duty, gives no room for laxity, bold, clairvoyant, dexterous. He hears the feedback from the citizens, responds appropriately. His decisions so far, according to Jami, are the best. Excellent. God crowns him with success. We have this one from Yemiton Damilare Adedeji, who says President Tinubu has hit the ground running, and every patriotic Nigeria, I'm hopeful of a better day ahead. May the good Lord bless Nigeria and Nigerians. Hashtag first 100 days. Jerry Leah Lena says these are days of rising cost. He says, is Tinubu sure he's not raising the cost of living instead of the standard of living? Well, I guess that we'll have that question answered in the coming days as we see the impact of the policies it's making and what it means for the purchasing power of Nigerians. This is from Rashido Duto. It says 37 days are a very good way to lay a solid foundation for a better Nigeria. Yes, it comes with pain. To me, it's a teething problem. Remember, no pain, no gain. Now, Josh says respite, relief, breather for businesses, albeit for 3 to 4 months. Multiple taxation is killing small businesses, and it seems that the president is responding to that as well. Mr. Subsidy at Subsidy 10 says, our time is now, and Baba for all. He says, good health. He has started well, but until the minister's list is out, I can't really say for now. And then he goes ahead to say, God bless Nigeria and God bless Africa. For Afolabi Benga Olajide, I'm not surprised by President Tinubu's performance. He's prepared for the job. He says this is the first time we're having a democratic president since the country was democratized. I'm sure all of these are a tip of the iceberg. And he says he's looking forward to more in the coming days. President Tinubu appears to be on the right track. He needs prayers and more sincere people around him. That's Malam Bashir Odun Ayo. And for Oyinbo Clement Bako, he says President Tinubu should invite the Niger Delta local illegal refinery operators to develop the technology and issue them a micro business license to operate, which will create jobs in the economy. Remember that the president has been talking about his passion to end oil theft and has had series of meetings at the Aso Villa with stakeholders in that regard. You too can join the conversation now on Twitter. If you use the hashtag first 100 days, Precious at Omino_Precious says the new administration is leading Nigeria on the right path. Although we have to make sacrifices too, there is no sweat without sweat. And she says President Tinubu is truly the man for the job. We believe that Nigeria will be great. All right, the question is your assessment of President Tinubu's performance in his first few weeks in office. We'll take the comments as they come in. Remember that you can also react to all the stories we're covering and the conversations we're having on the show. We'll take a short break, and when we're back, we're talking more about the tax policies of this new administration. Stay with us. So the president signed 4 executive orders yesterday, including the suspension of the 5% excise tax on telecommunication services in what appears an attempt to ease the tax burden on businesses and individuals.
His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu promised to address business-unfriendly fiscal policy measures and multiplicity of taxes. Consequently, President Bola Tinubu, in fidelity to the pledge to put Nigerians at the center of government policies, has signed the following executive orders. Executive Order 1, the Finance Act, Effective Date Variation Order 2023, has now deferred the commencement date of the changes contained in the Act from May 28, 2023 to September 1, 2023. This is to ensure adherence to the 90 days minimum advance notice for tax changes as contained in the 2017 National Tax Policy.
Mr. President, you actually want to simplify and make it friendly to business, the way we operate taxes in Nigeria. And as we know that when you talk about the revenue management, it's not only in tax collection. The starting point is our economic policy, because our aim is not to tax poverty. Our aim is not to tax production. Our aim is to increase our productive activity, capacity to produce. Then we can tax our consumption. And that is the direction of our economic planning. And then we want to increase the trust that we have in government. And if you observe what has happened in the last few days, the last few months that we've been here, we've kept to our word. Part of what we are doing today, just to increase this trust, that we are here to do what is the best for the country.
The president and this administration is very sensitive to the plight of the Nigerians, and like he's already promised, we will ensure that the suffering is reduced and also ensure that businesses operate in a more friendly environment where we manage taxes in a way that it is also very business friendly. In addition to, of course, we are here looking for increased revenue, but it should not be at the expense of the average Nigerian.
Any cost that has been passed over to the consumers will also be suspended, and this will be enforced through the consumer protection agencies of the government. We do know that ultimately, as all my colleagues have said, the ultimate gain is to alleviate the plight of Nigerians, and we will ensure that this is done through the appropriate agencies of government.
Yomi Olugbenro is a partner and West Africa tax leader at Deloitte. Thank you for joining us on the program this evening. Let's begin with your reaction to what we just saw. How much impact do you see this temporary tax relief have on businesses? And just what benefits should consumers anticipate in the coming days?
Thank you so very much, Nifemi, and it's great to be on your show. I must tell you that the decision, and the release of the executive order by the president yesterday would really go a long way, right, in assuaging the concerns of the investing public and taxpayers in the country. You know that no one, particularly in our part of the world, love paying taxes. I'm sure you don't. You pay it because it's a matter of obligation. You pay it because you understand that it's a civic obligation, and it's the requirement of the law. And so when those kind of compulsory obligations are being passed on to taxpayer, it's important that the action of the government, it's done in a very responsible manner, in a manner that shows that the sensitivity, right, of the taxpaying public, attention is paid to it. And the last recent release of changes, that we had just in the twilight of the immediate past administration, brought with it some bit of pressure. So laws were passed just towards the final hours, and in fact, in a particular case with the Finance Act, it was 28 days or so after the law was supposed to have been effective, so because the act itself said it was May 1, you have to use what the legal precedences, for such cases to be before people then realize that, well, if it was signed on the 28th, it doesn't matter if the act says it was 1st of May, it will be 28th. But that's not an ideal situation, right? In your some of the analysis you said, you made reference to, an existing national tax policy that was approved by the federal government in 2017. One of the critical requirements of that national tax policy is that you give taxpayer sufficient notice. A minimum of 90 days, 3 months is required between the time that the law is signed and released to the public and when it becomes operational, right? The whole essence of that is to ensure that taxpayers become familiar and acquainted with what the new obligations will be. In a number of cases, taxpayer needs to change their finance application. Taxpayer needs to put necessary process in place, change their financial model and all of that. So we didn't have that. So when the announcement came yesterday that now the government had listened and there is an executive order that has now varied the effective date and defied further to 1st of September, it was a very strong positive news to the taxpaying public. And if you look at the other half of that executive orders as well, some of the changes that were brought in relating to 5% tax on telecommunication services, the imposition of green taxes on single-use plastics and some category of vehicle, and a number of some of those decisions were things that got many of the taxpayers.
I hear you, Mr. Olugberu. Is there anything in here for consumers? Prices that go up in this part of the world do not easily return or come down to where they were before.
Well, but I guess that's where the work of the Consumer Protection Agency and I heard the clip you played, which was part of the announcement yesterday when the executive order was signed. It is the responsibility of the consumer protection authorities and the agencies that are responsible for monitoring how how businesses, all right, ensure that the concerns, the plight, the rights, of consumers are protected. It's their responsibility to then ensure that if they have been part of the costs, all right, that have been passed on to the end consumers, that it is reversed so that the real benefit of this action trickle down to the public. That's the intention. The intention isn't to make the suppliers and the service providers to profit on duty.
We're looking forward to that. But eventually, these suspensions will be over. Just how do you think government drives its tax revenue agenda without adding more burden on the people, given the current economic reality of most Nigerians?
Well, I think I will have answered that question slightly differently if the news of the new the Presidential Committee on Tax Reform, if that news hasn't, gone out today, maybe I will have had the kind of skepticism that, a number of people would have shared. Because, I was on a different show yesterday where I discussed that, look, this is a suspension. It's not, a permanent removal. But now, if you look at the terms of reference, at least the highlights that is, available in the public at the moment, government seems to be now, focused on making sure that the entire framework, for taxation, and fiscal policy in Nigeria is reviewed. So the work of this committee that, the president has just set up will, in my view, include reviewing, part of, some of these recent releases that were suspended, so that if there is no need for them, if there is need for consolidation, which is part of the, the mandate. So they will be looking at tax consolidation. They will be looking at the agencies. They will be looking at the issue of multiplicity of taxes. They will be looking at issue of, how do we ensure that we don't put, more burden on the taxpayer just because we want to get a lot more revenue. So it's striking that balance that I believe is going to be the critical work that this committee is going to be looking into.
So according to the presidency, the direction of its economic planning is not to tax production, but increase production activities, increase production capacity, and then tax consumption. Have you seen, the policies in the past few days moving in this direction yet?
Well, it's the start of, those kind of policies. But it's an appropriate signal that reinforces confidence in the statement that was shared, right? So if the government says, in as much as we want to make more revenue, we could have gone ahead to say, look, the law was signed by the past administration. 5% additional revenue on telecom will have fetching some extra money, right? The green taxes will have fetching some extra money. But the government is saying we also recognize that these are part of the critical sectors of the economy that's producing, and contributing. So, and our intention isn't to kill businesses. So we will step back a little, review the entire framework, and see where we need to, remove additional burden or consolidate more taxes and make the tax-paying experience a lot more friendly for taxpayers. So, for me, I will line, behind those comments to say until something else is done to the contrary. I think the actions taken so far are very reassuring. The actions taken so far seems to be aligned with that promise statement.
Quickly, let's touch on taxing the informal sector, because the FRS is now partnering with partnering the Market Traders Association to collect and remit VAT from markets. But we know what the current reality is, where even some government or government agencies use touts to collect taxes from the market people. For years they have labored under multiple taxation. How optimistic are you about this new collaboration, and how do you stop the years of rot in this regard?
Well, I'm actually I'm cautiously optimistic about the Digital VAT Direct initiative for a number of reasons. I think the side of the initiative that seems to excite me, two things. One is the fact that we're talking about digitizing and deploying technology. So it's not new tax that is being introduced. These are existing obligations that the Market Traders Association members are already exposed to. So if there's an attempt to simplify the process or leverage technology and all of that, so that excites me, because that will support the ease of paying taxes conversation. It also excites me because when you digitize, it's a lot easier to introduce more transparency, right? So all the non-state actors that are involved in collecting legal taxes, you can weed them off. The only concern I have is perhaps just the signaling effect to, the sector of the economy that seems to be, already overburdened. A significant number of these market traders are already not supposed to be part of the VAT compliance obligation, because their revenue threshold may be below the 25 million, right? Some of them may be offering services that are exempted. I think the kind of digitalization effort and deployment of technology should have been channeled to a different group of people. And
I'm afraid we have to leave it there. Mr. Olugbero, definitely, I'm sure in the coming days, we'll have more conversations in this regard. Yomi Olugbero is partner and West Africa tax leader at Deloitte. Thank you so much for your contribution tonight. Well, that's our program. Remember, you can join the conversation on Twitter. Use hashtag First 100 Days. You can watch a repeat broadcast at midnight and at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I am Nifemi Oguntoye.